Hello, cosmonaut. Today we are going to be exploring what Reddit asked men of Reddit. What makes a woman creepy? Answer 1. I have a neighbor girl who constantly watches me. I've barely ever spoken to her in the 5 or 6 years that she's lived here because I felt weird about her. She works at a bank and has found out that one of her customers is my family's lifelong friend. He called me after I got my boat, my motorcycle, my RV, after I was carrying building supplies in my house and asked questions each time. He would say, "Oh, hey, what's up? I heard you got a new bike. Emily told me it's a newer red one. What kind is it? I heard you were carrying a bunch of drywall in the house. When are you going to start hanging it?" She watched me cut my grass, work on cars, and anytime I see her, she's awkward as fuck and barely says hi. She's in her house 24/7, so I think she's watching me from out of the window. He called me the other day to say she's moving, and I couldn't be more happy to hear that. Answer 2. So I've had a stalker. Getting creepy is when you know someone and you see them doing things out of character and realize you are the reason they're doing it. I'm a pro musician. Years ago, I started talking to this chick who was a friend of a friend, and we seemed to hit it off. We met up, and it honestly just didn't click. I thought we both felt it, but then she started asking me to get together again. I took the hard step and said I didn't think it was a good match. She seemed to accept it. Then, she showed up to one of our shows. She was very much a homebody, so this struck me as odd. But whatever. Then a show 3 hours away from where she lived. Then an entire state away. She followed me across 4 states, each time offering to get a hotel room for us, trying to talk sexy and seduce me, and I was honestly so confused. I couldn't comprehend how she wasn't understanding that I wasn't interested. It took about 6 months for her to finally lay off, and we never spoke again. It took me a lot longer to realize that stalking isn't supposed to make sense when you're the one being stalked. The person no longer actually cares about you. They're seeking out a personal victory, like hunting down a baseball card or something. But the thing that creeped me the fuck out initially was seeing her turn up in Columbus, Ohio. She drove 3+ hours on her own. After rarely leaving her own town in the time I'd known her, she'd told me she didn't like traveling. To try and get me? It was like an uncanny valley thing. Seeing someone you knew did not belong in the place they were. Answer 3. He said we were fated to be together because we were the same age, older students, in university. Conveniently forgot there were other older students as well of the same age. Sent me multiple texts on how we were meant for each other, despite me saying I had a girlfriend. Demanded pics of the girlfriend as proof. Blocked her. She spent the next few years trying to stalk me, trying to find my place of work so she could apply to the same place, trying to find where I lived so she could move here, all because I was nice to her one time when she needed help, locked out of apartment, so I said I helped to call for the locksmith. Answer 4. Got upset with a girl for sticking a note to the wall of my bedroom with chewed gum when she left the morning after she slept over for the first time. I didn't know her all that well, but we liked each other. I still liked her at that point. I just told her the note was nice, but I wasn't happy to have to clean it up and that I'd probably have to repaint my whole wall because of it. That evening, she put another note, without gum this time, on the front doorstep of my condo. Didn't knock or do anything to let me know it was there. Then hid in her car in the parking lot of ours until I happened to come outside and find the note. It was 4 rambling pages writing on both sides, briefly apologizing for the gum, telling me she got the idea from a Chelsea Handler book or something. Then pretty much professing her love for me for the rest of the note. As flattering as it sort of was, we'd only known each other maybe a week. That alone was a bit much for me. But then I saw her car in the parking lot, walked over there and saw her hiding in the driver's seat with her seat reclined all the way back. She said she stayed there for hours just because she wanted to make sure I got her note. I was creeped out by that, but was nice to her about it. I kind of backed off from the potential relationship stuff, but cut all contact with her when she bragged to me about scamming the last guy she talked to out of $400 when she pretended she was pregnant. Answer 5. About a year ago, a woman at the Arby's drive-thru creeped me out. She asked me if I wanted to hang out, and I said no. She asked me multiple times more, and I kept saying no. At that point, she even stuck her face and arm out the window in a clear attempt to pull me in for a kiss. I rolled up my window on her, and her female coworker shoved her off and gave me my food. I made a complaint about it and, thankfully, had the heroic woman's info to name drop, and she voucher for me. The female creep was actually held accountable and fired. Answer 6. Through a party at my house when I was in graduate school, a woman from a different program within our department followed me into my bedroom and started talking to me really closely. I politely excused myself. Later that night, I was walking past her and she grabbed my ass, like got her hand around a full cheek and squeezed. A few years later, I told this story to a female coworker and she said, "Afterward, did you feel sort of embarrassed? Like maybe it was your fault somehow that she did that and what you could have done differently for it not to happen?" I was like, yeah, one of those conversations I'll remember for the rest of my life. Answer 7. I worked as an assistant manager skate shop in a mall years ago and had a 16-year-old sales kid who kept hitting on me. I was 20 at the time. She kept saying pretty inappropriate things even when I had asked her to stop. But my manager saw a regional manager thought I was joking. One kicker was we were behind the register and I was taking some things out of a box when she ran her nails on my back. Immediately contacted our manager who straight up did not believe me and took her side. Next day, sales kid cornered me in the back room trying to tell me a secret me. When the manager came in on their off day and saw it all play out, she was immediately fired on the spot. I quit about a month later since it sucked not being believed no matter how many times I said something. Answer 8. Few years back, I was managing a slew of shops for the company I worked for, and we'd long before hired a young man who I ended up mentoring and promoting through his time with us. Truly a star employee. We are good friends to this day too. Ownership transferred over a key holder from out of state to promote her up, and they put her in charge of a store. I became her boss. At some point in the winter, my mentee disclosed to me that this woman had been aggressively hitting on him, suggesting he dump his girlfriend for her, etc., etc. It was quite shocking to hear. It made a lot of sense though, because this woman was hyper-fixated on bashing his appearance. I reported it to my superior, who simply wrote her up and left her in charge of my mentee. It was a whole shit show. While I was in charge of her, I didn't have the direct power to terminate another manager. I was furious with my superior for not doing more. I kind of had no choice but to delegate one half of my work to a co-manager of mine, so that I could be with my mentee and essentially supervise and protect him from being sexually harassed at work. He eventually decided to move back home, and when he did, they fired the manager that harassed him. Fucking mess. So glad I don't work there anymore. I cannot believe the extent I had to go to in order to protect one of my employees from sexual harassment. Hey you, if you enjoying the video, subscribe for more histories. Answer 9. Story time. I think this qualifies as creepy. When I was 13 to 14, I dated a girl named Heather. She was sweet enough. It's only like 1 month in or so. We're on the phone and she starts talking about animals, about how she abuses them. Right then, she told me about a bird she put into a microwave and a cat she put into a dryer, etc. Little kid me was 10 out of 10, freaked out and ended it instantly. Just some light stalking after that, but I definitely felt way worse about the animals than anything she could do to me. Answer 10. There was a girl that was dating a friend of mine. They broke up and I was still friends with her. She started texting me a lot more and she started making her interest very low. At this point, I told her I wasn't really comfortable with that because I didn't want to upset things with my other friend. At this point, she started showing up to my job at a hospital to visit me. Then she started saying things like, I should be able to date who I want without worrying about what my ex thinks, and completely ignoring that I was saying I didn't want to date her. It was like she thought that I literally had no agency in it. Answer 11. I broke up with my girlfriend. She took it very poorly. She started calling my friends that she had never hung out with. I don't even know or cared WTF she was doing. But I had several friends of mine tell me she had contacted them out of the blue, asking to hang out. I went to study abroad in Japan, which is on the other side of the planet from my home. I studied at a rural university. As I was sitting in the cafeteria with my classmates, she suddenly came in and sat at my table. She had befriended one of my classmates and came to visit. That's some seriously creepy psycho vibes for sure. Answer 12. I think you dated Leather Heather. In late 2019, there was a woman arrested near my hometown who had a shed full of animal carcasses. There were your normal hunting species like deer, pheasants, ducks, etc. But there were also a few cats, dogs, rats, and larger ones like pigs and cows. It's a farming town, and a lot of the farmers have large quantities of livestock, so when the first few went missing, they just chalked it up to the normal bloating or injuries that livestock go through. Even when they couldn't find the bodies. Inherently, there's nothing too wrong with this. She could have just really been into taxidermy or something. But they didn't find the carcasses taxidermic. They found the skin, feathers, or fur stripped from head to toe, beak to tail. The rest of the body remained almost completely intact, while she would hang up the skin like jerky to dry. She would attach a note to each, written in the voice of the animal. One particularly haunting one was of a young lamb. White wool, pink skin, short, long it hurts. Curls enter my flesh and dig deep. Fingernails in every follicle. Years of attempts, I concede that I cannot pluck each fiber away to end the torment. I must live with my woolly wire, needles, and pins inside my limbs. On death, my body will be free, my ears silenced, my mouth collapsed, my rump sewn. I pray day and night for the release from my skin. I pray day and night for the release of my skin. The last sentence repeated until the end of the page. She had pages and pages of journals written by animals in the first person, always wanting to escape their bodies. She had about 17 journals, but the last one was filled with entries she had written from the perspective of named people in our hometown. Same thing, wanting to end the suffering of life and escaping their mortal bodies. They finally caught her when she got greedy with one of the farmers and stole more than one animal from him. He tipped off the cops that there was a smell coming from her property. Upon her arrest, they found that farmer's weekly schedule meticulously documented on one of the journal pages, where he was in the day, which animals he fed when he was home. When he went out, it sounded like they got her just in time. Answer 13. Not understanding boundaries or continuing to pursue when I've made my disinterest obvious. Matched with this girl on Tinder and we messed around for a little while. I wasn't serious and made that obvious to her from get-go, but I could tell she had fallen hard. She kept pushing for more, not having any intention to mislead her. I told her this wasn't going to work out and ended it. She still kept texting me, so I blocked her number and on all social media too. Sometimes I'd check my call log and see her number in recent calls. Turns out, even if you block someone, you won't get a ring, but their number will still appear in recent calls if they've called you. And this girl kept calling me almost every day. Months later, I got a friend request on Snapchat from an account I didn't recognize. I ended up adding the account. It was her, of course. She sent me a message that simply said, "Come outside." I look out my front door window and there she is, sitting in her car parked beside the mailbox. For the record, I had never invited this girl to my house or ever given her my address. Anyway, when I didn't come outside, she walked up to my front door and waited. I opened the door to confront her and saw her. She looked miserable, crazy, and begged me to take her back. I should have blown up right there, but surprisingly kept my cool. Told her I wasn't interested, and if she ever pulled this shit again, I'd call the cops. She finally got the point. Answer 14. Sharing too many details of their messed up life after just meeting. I was swimming at my complex's pool a few years back on an insanely hot day. Pool was packed. A young woman proceeded to start a friendly convo, but then she told me where she was from and her difficult family life within 5 minutes of meeting her LOL. About 10 minutes in, she asked which building I lived in. I lied and stayed vague about my apartment address. Another 10 minutes later, and she finally gets a hint that I'm not really interested in her and proceeds to make it insanely awkward by asking me if she was bothering me. I essentially said, "Yeah, kinda. I was just trying to swim a few laps and mind my own business," and she looked distraught. Answer 15. Lack of boundaries at work. Here's the example. A woman I worked with last year for like 2 months seemed to take a massive liking to me on the first shift we worked together. Because on the second shift, she started showering me in comments of how happy she always is whenever I'm around her, and that she loves working with me. I took that as nothing, but then she started making comments about my physical appearance and how good-looking she thinks I am. This then progressed on her constantly hinting at wanting a hug from a man whenever I walked around because she was stressed. I ignored it until one day she flat out hugged me and put her head buried in my chest whilst I just stood there, awkwardly not knowing how to react. She claimed she think I needed it because I looked stressed or something. Not done yet. Because on that same shift I was in the staff room on my break, and she burst in the room with security tag stickers stuck on her breasts, with clothes on, and said, "What do you think? Like what you see?" I then just did an awkward laugh because what am I supposed to say? Another time we were having some casual friendly conversation in the warehouse and she started becoming playful. She then put her face right into mine, playfully looking into my eyes, and it honestly felt she was about to kiss me. I then just leaned backwards and she backed off. And on our last shift together before she was moved to another branch as her placement at my branch was temporarily, she walked past me and said, "You have a crush on me, don't you, Jake?" I then told her I don't have a crush on anyone, and then she walked past me quietly saying, "I keep quiet about it, but I'm actually a very sexual person." I then went speechless and actually said, "I don't know what to say to that. I think," and this point she realized how she was coming off, because she apologized to me and told me she didn't mean to come off creepy. Keep in mind, this woman was already engaged to a man who was picking her up every night so she got home safely, and she was acting all this way with me behind his back. I'll admit, if she was single, then I might have been interested in dating her outside of work, but the fact she was engaged and had a boyfriend put me right off. That, and it's just plain inappropriate to act that way at work. Before anyone says I could have complained to HR about her for sexual harassment, I'm a man. They aren't going to take me seriously, and I think if I end up saying or doing the wrong thing, that could be used against me. Hence why I was extremely awkward anytime she did or said inappropriate things to me. Hey you! Subscribe for more histories. Answer 16. Met a mate's girlfriend for the first time. They'd been together 9 weeks. She introduced herself to me as his fiancé, immediately got bad vibes and suggested to him later that maybe this was a bad move, which he didn't agree with. It went downhill from there. She got pregnant. He claimed that the condom broke. I doubt he wore one. His father tried to pay her to get an abortion. She responded by repeatedly threatening to unalive herself, but she didn't. Ended up giving birth to a baby boy and then ran off with a bloke 25 years older than her. Answer 17. I have grief depression around the holidays. Started seeing a woman just before Thanksgiving. Was in her presence a total of 3 times over the course of 2 weeks. Explained to her that I was going to be okay. This was just a regular thing for me, but I still wanted to see her. Just might not be as happy in general, but it passes after the holidays. She insisted on helping or trying to make things better. I reinforced the boundary because letting someone else take on that burden was historically fruitless, and they ended up being depressed too. Then I had to manage theirs and mine. She wouldn't let up, so I withdrew even more, and then finally explained that I couldn't be with someone who wasn't listening to my needs so early on. Come to find out, she was posting stuff on Reddit about the progress of our relationship and referring to it as love, and then sought a ton of attention when I called it off. Never used my name, but that's a ton of boundary violations in my mind. Answer 18. A lot of the same things men do. Showing up at unexpected hours. Want to be treated special because they show up wherever, whenever. Act like you owe them something because they exist. More so, really, it seems like a personality both men and women can have. Expecting you to drop everything because they have a demand. Sometimes you can't do that because of responsible obligations. If we all learn to lower our expectations, we tend to not get hurt. Lower expectations, not standards. Though make sure the standards are reasonable, or you will live a lonesome life. Answer 19. Once met a young woman in college, and the first thing she said to me after being nice to her was that she wanted to bear my children. I was only 19. But then again, I later learned she had an abusive past, but still. Answer 20. Using a diagnosis for a slight mental condition, autism or bipolar, to stand on being a complete fucking asshat in a social situation. But you know damned fucking well they can control themselves because it never happens in the open with strangers around. They're just a fucking dick. Answer 21. I mean, what makes a man creepy? I know a girl who's obsessed with sex. She constantly talks about it. She would constantly hit on me even though I am married. She constantly hit on me before I even met my wife. She would hit on minors because they're hot. I live in a giant trailer park community. People try to avoid her. If anyone new moves in, she tries to bang them. She randomly flashes people even if they're with their kids. She finally got pregnant from a guy she's been banging since he was 8. Think about that. She's autistic and has CPTSD from being raped as a kid by some random guy in the park every day for 4 years. The 8-year-old called the cops one day when he saw what was happening on the dude's literal porch. So she has a savior complex towards him, and essentially any male that's nice to her. She asks people to choke her randomly and screams daddy at people. She needs help, but I legit can't be around her. She's absolutely creepy and disgusting. She doesn't want help. There's a 7-year difference between her and the baby daddy. Who doesn't know is a baby daddy? He's about to turn 21. I think nearly every person in our park has had sex with her. Every person. All of that dude's friends have had sex with her in their friend group. She's 28 and a predator to the max. I gave her a sit down one night and started asking hard questions. She shut down and started acting like a 5-year-old. Major defense mechanism there. I can't walk my nephew to one of our children's parks because she lives next to it, and will start creeping on my ass, talking about how hot my wife is and wanting to get with us both around a fucking 5-year-old. I asked if she had a baby because people were talking about it. Boom, flashes me at the park in front of parents, kids. Everyone, do these look like mommy milkers to you? Starts to try and milk herself in front of everyone like a cow. IDK? It's the same if a guy did any of this. Yeah, okay, she's a player, I guess, but it's creepy. She doesn't care about people, she's fixated on getting laid constantly. Answer 22. Having a list of requirements and bragging about it. Sure, we all have preferences, but something is wrong with you if you share it with a world full of strangers. Gives me the, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best vibe. Also, accusing every ex in their life of being abusers. Yes, it happens, and it's terrible. But if your last 8 serious relationships in the last 3 years all abused you, I start to wonder about your decisions and honesty. What are you going to say about me, even if this ends amicably? Answer 23. Friend had a fiance who had those crazy eyes, and when I would come around, she would get close to him, like grab his arm and never leave his side while I was there. If he came to have lunch with me, she would text him nonstop. We went for a bike ride, motorcycles, out in the country, and his phone was in his jacket pocket. When we got to a gas station about 100 miles out, he checks his phone, and he has 9 texts that got progressively worse. Hey, just checking in to see how you're doing. Hey, why aren't you responding? Is everything okay? If you don't want to respond, that's okay. I'll see you later. I don't get it. I thought we had an agreement that we wouldn't do this to each other. I'm very worried now, wondering if I made a mistake with this engagement. It doesn't take a long time. Get 100 miles away on a motorcycle in the country. It's not like he was gone 24 hours. One day, a couple months later, this dude comes home to find she had left him and taken all of his furniture, the drapes, towels, all food and supplies. Just loaded it all up while he was out of town working, and she left. He lived in a bare house for a while. After a few weeks, he bought new things. Fast forward a couple months, dude is on a date. He brings the girl to his house, and when they go inside, this ex is standing there in the living room. Seems he didn't change the locks. Ex starts acting like the guy is cheating on her, and she caught him. He can really pick them. Answer 24. Anyone who flies off the handle over nothing. Once had a girlfriend who was going through some struggles that I wasn't properly equipped to help her with. I suggested she should think about seeing a professional, and she starts getting very rude at me, telling me that it doesn't work for her. We go back and forth like that, and I realized that it was turning into an argument, so I said, hey, I don't want us to both get super angry with each other and say something we'll regret, so I'm taking some time away from my phone to calm down. I will text you later. About an hour later, I turn my phone back on to literally dozens of messages of her cussing me out, saying I'm only pretending to care about her and that I'm an awful person and how would this ever calm her down and fuck you and all that shit. Should have broken up with her right then and there, but I didn't, since I've always believed in second chances. Finally, our entire situation came to an end when, once again, she went off the deep end and started telling me that I don't deserve her and that I have the absolute audacity to treat her like that and all of that stuff all over again. This girl was the direct cause of my first and only panic attack I've ever had. So glad that I don't have that in my life anymore. Answer 25. Too much too fast. Had a woman I really liked and saw potential in together. This was years ago, back when I used to smoke weed every day. It was like 4 months in, and she was giving me crap about it. Honestly, I could understand if it was something relating to me being unmotivated or distant from being high all the time or something. But she came out and talked about how she was concerned about my sperm count and being able to get her pregnant as if it was a totally reasonable concern 4 months into dating, which lead into her admitting she very much planned on getting pregnant by me by now and would keep it. She had told me she was on birth control, which was a lie. Found that out in the same conversation. Freaked me right the fuck out. No indication of this kind of crazy at all up to that point. Ran for the hills. Answer 26. Being very openly neurotic and applying all your trauma and worries to every man you see. Have a female coworker that essentially thinks every man is a covert rapist, and especially so for any man that slightly resembles any man that slighted her. When your coworkers have to tell you to shut up, it's getting bad. This coworker also reported me as a suspect for a major crime in the region that had national coverage in the true crime community, despite the fact she could have taken 5 minutes to walk over to our physical sign and log for that year, or maybe just talk to our coworkers about my character, all because I'm middle-aged and husky like a grainy photo, and she patted herself on the back for being helpful. Answer 27. Worked with a girl at my very first job when I was 21. She was 25 to 26. Every morning, she'd turn up at my seat asking if I wanted to go for a coffee smoke. If I declined, she'd wait till I was heading down just to tag along. Unwelcome touching, spending most of her time at my table with her laptop, constantly asking if I would walk her home after work. I purposely started taking up more work to stay late so I wouldn't have to hear it. Also being weird during meetings and office retreats. Thankfully, I left that company 7 to 8 months after joining, so I didn't have to deal with her at work. But then she got my number from someone and started messaging me. It took my girlfriend at the time to call her angrily and tell her to fuck off. Answer 28. Had an ex stalk me once. She cheated on me and broke it off, so we went our separate ways, and we had only been dating for maybe 2 months. So I wasn't too beat up about it. After about a month of being broken up, she started calling me, begging me to take her back, leaving multiple messages on my phone daily while I was at work. She would even send her friends to my work to talk to me about her and tell me to take her back. The calls lasted for about a year until I got a new phone and moved to an apartment in a different part of town. Then a few years later, I'm chilling in my room when my roommate tells me there's some girl at the door for me. Lo and behold, there she was. Apparently, she lived in the same complex and saw me when I was driving one day and followed me home. I'd say that qualifies as creepy. Not too long later, I moved across the country and never heard from her again. Answer 29. I had this girl in one of my college classes befriend me, start a study group, go running together, and had a normal platonic relationship for years. After college, we lost contact. I was simply not interested in her. After about a decade, she tracked me down after Googling my name, finding my grandma and godmother's obituary with my name listed there, and began contacting my family on Facebook. BC, I don't have social media. My cousin contacts me and forwarded me this woman's number. Curious as I was, I called just to catch up on life. BC, of course I was naive and just thought it was cool to have a college connection. I was already happily married with 2 kids. She professed her love to me and told me if she didn't lose contact with me for so long, she'd have won me over. And if she hadn't married her husband, she'd go after me, make me hers, and love me like no one else ever could. Y'all, I'm a woman. That behavior's creepy. I was not into her at all. That kind of talk skeeves me out.
That was enough for today, cosmonaut. I'll wait for you in the next travel.